This is Kevin Martin. I am Kevin Martin with Peak Performance Mindset Coaching, and I am a coach. I'm also the co-founder along with Lisa Schermerhorn. And I want to present something to you today. Whether you're a client of ours, a student of ours, or just someone who wants or needs to learn how to work with other people, how to deal with other people, I want to present to you something that I've found along the way, something I've taken years to really discover: the secret principles for success in interacting with others. As a matter of fact, I can shorten it to the secret principles for success. Because if you know how to interact with people, if you know how to deal with people, if you know how to deal with problems between people, if you know how to really work with others to get along, then you'll be successful. So these can be called just simply secret principles for success, aka also known as NLP presuppositions. Now, NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. NLP is a set of tactics, strategies, and techniques that help you work with the mind and the body at the same time. It's a wonderful, wonderful system. And part of NLP were these presuppositions. Presuppositions are a really funny word. These are things that are presupposed. Basically, principles. Anytime you have principles, you're presupposing that they're true. So these presuppositions are the secret principles for success. Now, they're not exactly the exact NLP presuppositions. I've worked them and modified them so that they are things that you can understand. They are things that you can use. And they are things that I use. These principles that I use in my everyday life, whether I'm working with family members, friends, co-workers, networking, clients, customers, it doesn't matter. I use these principles throughout my life whenever I have to interact with anyone, and they're very helpful. So let's get into it, shall we? The first one of the principles for success with interacting with others is respect the model of the world. Respect others' model of the world. Model of the world. What is that? And how can I respect it if I don't know what it is? Huh? Let me explain what this is. Respecting the other's model of the world is simply to understand that other people have different models of the world, different than ours. To understand that we see things differently, we think differently, we take in things differently. And why would that be? Why would that be? Well, it's because each and every one of us have separate and individual and unique experiences in our lives. We have different values that we were taught as we were growing up, and we, from the things we actually figured out ourselves as well. And we have different beliefs. Okay, some of us have some general beliefs that everybody believes in. Yes, gravity exists. Found that out. Now, we have different beliefs. Okay, so our experiences have shaped our values and our beliefs. And because of that, and because everybody has different experiences, different values, and different beliefs, everybody sees the world in a different way. We all have a different model of the world. And what does that mean? It means if I see something one way, and because the way you've been brought up and the beliefs that you've created, you see something a different way, why is it? If we're both looking at the same thing. For instance, police learned this a long time ago. When they have witnesses of an event, they realize that they can get witness testimonials from several different people, and they'll all be different. As a matter of fact, if they're all identical, they know there's a problem. But they expect them all to be different. Why are they all different? Well, sometimes it's just a physical place where you are, so you have a different perspective visually from the other person. Usually it's where you are here, your beliefs, your experiences, your values give you a different perspective from what's going on in the event. If this event, this car accident, is fresh in your mind from your own car accident, well, you have a perspective that's unique from everybody else, who some people may never have gotten in car accidents. You may actually have some beliefs about car accidents. You could believe there's certain drivers of certain types of cars. I remember growing up, I had a friend that said Volvo drivers were jerks. They believed this. Every time they saw a Volvo driver, they'd point out the things that they did. So if they come to an accident where there was a Volvo driver, instantly the belief would be that person caused the accident. It was their belief. That's how they approach the experience. And we all approach these differently. So let's go back to, now you understand model of the world. Let's go back to respect for others, model of the world. Because here's what happens is we approach things with a belief that everybody else thinks the same way we do. We think of our thinking, our process as, hey, this is common sense. It's common sense to us. And so we approach others, and when we're looking at what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're acting, and if it doesn't make sense to us, if it's not in our frame, if it's not in our filters, then we say, oh, something's wrong with that person. We're not respecting the model of the world. That's just it. Judgment. So respecting others' model of the world basically says, let's look a little deeper as to not have pass judgment. Let's look a little deeper as to not pass judgment. So now you have a little more understanding why people think and act differently. Because we all have our own model of the world. We all have our own things that are going on that have shaped the way we see things. And by the way, if you just had an accident, you're in a certain frame of mind, just like my example a little while ago. Whatever frame of mind you're in at the time you're experiencing things, at the time you're doing things, saying things, affects that as well. I remember seeing many people have saying, hey, you don't know what space this other person is in, so give them a chance, meaning you don't know what's just happened to them. And then there's that old axiom is walk a mile in someone's shoes. It's true. Until you can get into someone's shoes, you're really experiencing what they're experiencing and what they have experienced. I know that's a little difficult, but you really can't understand what they're going through. Therefore, you can't understand how they react, why they react, what they do, what they say. So respect the other's model of the world. I think this is a big thing. I think this is one of the biggest things because it brings down the judgments. And when it brings down the judgments and allows you to be open to say, okay, then to really find out and to discover what's going on with this in this person's world. One last story about this, because I think this is one of the most important things. John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. John tells a story about being on a bus or a train. Don't remember, but there was a guy next to him across the aisle, I believe, and he had two little children, and they were going rampant. They were running around playing, they were screaming and yelling. And the first thing John thought was, oh my goodness, what kind of parent is this? Let his children go out like that. It's unsafe, a moving vehicle, whatever. And then another thought was, how unfair is this? He's not thinking of others at all. He's letting these kids run around. He's letting these kids make all sorts of noise and disrupt everybody else. So the judgments just piled up. And then at some point, the guy leans over and says, I really don't know what to do. I really don't know too. We just came from the hospital. Their mother just passed away. They don't get it. They don't understand. I don't know how I'm going to tell them. In that moment, in that instant, judgments just went away. And John actually felt for him, talked to him, whatever. But it's easy to create these judgments because we don't know what's going on. We don't know how they see the world, especially in the instant. Maybe something like this has happened. So it's very important. Once we learn to really become aware that when we see someone doing, saying, acting, whatever it is, in a way that we don't understand, in a way that actually might trigger us, step back and say, hey, I'm not in their world. They may have a completely different model of the world from me. I wonder what it is, and I wonder why this seems appropriate for them. Principle 2, people are not their behaviors. People are not their behaviors. I just gave you, some examples as to why they may not be their behaviors. They have a different model of the world. So when we think of behavior as weird, we put it on them. But this is something we've been doing and experiencing all our lives. We grow up as children, or we parent children. We do the same thing. And in order to keep children safe, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, aren't there? Okay. You should be doing this, this, and this, but you can't do this. Don't do that. Don't do that. And so we have these boundaries that are put around us. And we're children. We're infants. We're young children. What do? We do it anyway. What happens when we do it? We get scolded. We get scolded. We say, this isn't right. I told you not to do it. And sometimes we get put down. But oftentimes after a little while, we're not told, hey, this was a bad choice. We're told we are bad for doing it. And when we're told that over and over and over again, that actually feels like it becomes a part of us. It is us. And especially when people keep on pointing to us as our behavior as bad. We're not. That's a behavior. Those are choices we're making. Choices we're making in a moment. And the thing with choices is you can figure out how to make a different choice. If someone has a behavior, don't label them because of the behavior. Look at the behavior as something separate from them. Yes, they are choosing to have that behavior at some level. And that behavior can be taken care of if they find the right help, if it's a really, really bad behavior they can't control. People are not their behaviors. So the idea on this is let's not have behavior as part of the identity, how we associate what we put on people. Let's not associate the behavior as the actual person. Bad behavior, bad choices, but not bad person. Okay? People are not their behaviors. Number 3, all actions have a purpose. All behavior has a positive intention. A positive intention. Now, this sounds weird. And when I learned this, when I first heard this, I said, there's no way. There's no way. This principle, by the way, is one for you to, how you're looking at people. And it goes hand in hand with the last one, as to not really judge the people on their behaviors, not put their behaviors as them, but also for ourselves. Because sometimes we have behaviors we don't understand. Sometimes we have behaviors we don't like, don't we? Of course we do. I want you to know, though, all of our behaviors started off at some point in our lives with a positive intention for us. No matter how bad the behavior is. If you're binge eating and you're getting unhealthy, if you're smoking and you're getting unhealthy, whatever the behavior is, no matter how bad it is, at some point it started off as a positive thing for us, usually some sort of way to protect us. So what this principle does for us is it allows us to really, again, separate the behavior from the person if we're looking externally, and to know, no matter what kind of behavior it is that they have, even if it's self-destructive behavior, that behavior started off at some point in their lives as something positive. They didn't have an intention for self-destruction. And for you as well. For you as well, if you got behaviors that you don't like, that you habits that are there and you just don't like them, they started off with a positive intention. For this one, when I'm working with clients, the first thing I do is, after explaining this, you have a behavior that you don't like. Possibly when you were growing up, if it's binge eating, for instance, or overeating. When you were growing up, possibly when you were small, maybe you didn't get a lot of the food at the table. Maybe you had a lot of siblings and you had to fight for the food. Or maybe you just didn't have a lot of money, or your parents didn't have a lot of money. And so that behavior stuck in. When there's food, get as much as you can. You don't know if there's going to be another meal like this, or you don't know if there's going to be another chance like this. If you were to actually take that to heart and say, well, okay, well, maybe that's why it started, you wouldn't hate the behavior so much. You wouldn't hate the habit so much. Because the next step would be, after an understanding, is to thank the behavior for being there. Even though right now, today, in the world you're in, that is maybe destroying you. But you can actually find yourself to thank the behavior, because that's the way to move away from the behavior, is to accept it, not to fight it. Not to fight it. We don't fight behaviors. We don't fight the things within us that we can't control. Because when we try to fight it, when we try to push against it, that part within us will win all the time. We'll talk about behaviors and willpower. Okay, some people actually have a lot of willpower and they can get through a thing or two. But willpower gets you through, let's say, a battle with something internal, your subconscious mind, but it won't get you through the war. You really have to go to understand what's going on. And in this case, learn to be thankful for it. I just saw a friend of mine overseas who was talking openly about the stuff that's happened to him in his life. And he's had a lot of abuse, throughout childhood and the foster care system, and even in adulthood. And he said he's grateful for all of these things that happened to him, because he learned from them, because he became the person he is now, who is helping thousands of people. The idea is, once we can get to the point where we can have some gratitude for the things we didn't like so much that happened to us, or the things we don't like so much that's going on with our own behaviors and habits that we can't seem to control. It's interesting, once you turn it around and recognize that you can't fight it, and it was there for a purpose in our lives at one time anyway. Be thankful for it, be grateful for it. And sometimes, and oftentimes, things start to change, and then maybe that habit that you had that you dislike so much starts to change. So here's a principle that it actually works with the way you see other people, but it works with the way you see yourself and can help you with yourself. Number 4, everyone is doing the best they can with the resources available to them. This is an incredible principle for understanding people. Again, it goes back to the first one. Everybody's got a little bit of a different model of the world. And since we all grew up with different experiences, and we've created different values and come up with different belief beliefs in what we can do and what we're capable of. And, you know, we all have different knowledge levels as well. So in the moment, when something's happening, the person's doing the best they can with the resources available to them in the moment. This just allows you to have a deeper understanding that some people don't have the kind of resources that you might have. When I say resources, I mean the experiences that you can use to help you through problems, to help you through issues, to help you be successful. Not everybody has that. So everyone is doing the best they can with the resources available to them. The map is not the territory. Again, this is building on that model of the world. The model of the world is a map, right? And this is for us to look at for ourselves and to realize everybody else has to deal with this as well. The way in which we see the world is really not the world. This thing about several people giving eyewitness accounts of something that happened and all giving it a little differently and some very differently, they all see the world differently. So they saw the accident very differently. The map is not the territory. When you have the actual physical map and you have the green for the forest and the trees and the blue for the lakes, and then you have roads and everything like that, the person who created the map created it as best they can or as best they could at the time they made it. And maybe some things that changed. Maybe they were a little off course, but it's the way they interpreted what was going on. So maybe the lake's not as big or as close to the roads or close to this or that. Maybe the trees aren't as wooded and there are trails for it that you can't see on the map. It was only made as best as possible by the map maker at the time he was making it. But it truly is. The green is not forest, right? Take it to the next level. The blue is not really wet. It's a representation of what's out there. And if that representation is off a little, the map's not accurate. It's not accurate to reality. And it's the same thing with our model, our map. Because our map of the world and everybody else's map of the world and how they see the world has to do with the filters they're using. Again, they're all their experiences as they grew up that shaped their values, shaped their morals, shaped their beliefs in others, their beliefs in themselves. So whenever they experience something, they use those filters and they see the world that way. That's why we have arguments. We have arguments over politics. We have arguments over religion. You know, we all have these different beliefs, and we can't believe that others can't see it that way. So we get into arguments. We all have different maps. Knowing this, that we all have different maps, or models of the world, which is the first one, and knowing that these models are not the actual territory. No one has an absolute map of reality. We're not that objective. We can't be that objective. We got so much that shaped us. But again, know this when you're talking to somebody, when you hear these things from somebody. 6, you are in charge of your mind and therefore your results. Tell you what, the only thing in life you are in charge of, the only thing that you can control is your mind, your thoughts. You might say, Kevin, I got thoughts coming in and out. When you focus, you can control your thoughts. You can control your thoughts. There may be thoughts that are going to come in and you can shut them out by focusing on something else. But that's the whole thing, is you're in charge. You're in charge. You can't control anything externally. You can't control any people. You can't control events. You can't control the weather. There's a lot of things externally that affect us. The one thing you are in charge of is your mind. This principle is for you. This principle is for you. When we talk about bringing up judgments, guess what? With a little bit of awareness of the other people have different maps, different models, and they're not behaviors, that allows you to see a person a little differently. And you can make the choice to do that. You're in charge of your mind. Okay? So that's when you're in charge of your mind and your thoughts, basically you're in charge of your results. Because it's your thoughts that drive your actions, and it's your actions that drive your results. So you are in charge of your results. Whoa. A lot of people will be stopping to right about now and saying, wait a second here. Wait a second here. I haven't gotten the results I wanted in my life. What do you mean you're in charge of results? How much charge have you decided to take of your mind? How much charge have you decided to take of the choices that you've made? When you really get this, you know that you're in charge. You're in charge. You know, when you don't get the results you want, you realize why. You realize, hey, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or I decided not to do this or that. This is cool because this empowers you. This empowers you. One of my mentors, Zig Ziglar, used to always say, no one can make you feel bad without your permission. Fits right here. You're in charge of your mind. And you're going to say, whoa, people say things about me. People, do things and get me so upset, or it makes me feel so bad. You've given them permission. You've given them permission. Once you realize it, you can not allow anyone to affect the way you feel and the way you think. This is a really cool principle. This is a very empowering principle. People have all the resources they need to succeed or achieve whatever they want. Oh my God. All the resources. Now, we're not talking about external resources, finances, and everything like that. I mean, inside, you have all the resources you need to succeed or achieve whatever you want. You can do it. What resources? Once you realize, especially the last principle, you can control what you're thinking about. And when you control what you're thinking about, you can also control your emotions, have that state control, use your thoughts to learn, use your mind to bring in knowledge, to problem solve, to have leadership, to create desire, to create motivation. It's within everybody's reach. All interactions should increase wholeness. This particular one was written in such a way that even people taking NLP couldn't understand it when they first read it. I've simplified this because it really does work with interactions with anyone else, whether it's interactions at work with your employees or coworkers or clients, prospects, bosses, or interactions outside of work with your family, your children, your siblings, your parents, your friends. All interactions should increase wholeness. Let me explain this. We sometimes will interact in a way where we tear down somebody, where we break them apart. And sometimes we do this inadvertently, sometimes we do this on purpose, depending on our own state. It doesn't mean that with every single person you take them to therapy and help them become whole. No, it means that whatever interaction you have should not be of a negative type to break them down, to tear them apart. Even even if you're a manager, even if you're a boss, even if you're a parent, there are ways to critique, there are ways to criticize, there are ways to help change behaviors that's not resourceful without tearing them down, without breaking that person up. So the idea is that any interaction you have, you should go in there with the fact that you're not going to negatively tear them down, tear their person, their esteem, their thoughts of themselves and their own capabilities. Examples of that is easy. Let's go back to the examples of children. You're a bad boy, you're a bad girl. That doesn't increase wholeness unless you want for the whole person to be bad. It tears them down. Or when you see someone who's trying something and say, you really suck at that. Can't understand why you even tried it. It tears someone down. There's a lot better ways to critique. So this means that all interactions, whenever you're interacting, stranger or not, doesn't matter, should increase wholeness or should at least not decrease wholeness, tear someone down. Okay? There is only feedback, no failure. This is common sense. If you've been in the business world, you know that we like to reframe failure. Everyone likes to reframe failure. But it's true. It's not just a saying. It's when you don't succeed in something, when something doesn't work. Guess what? It's a place to learn. Best thing is, the biggest thing is, you learn that however you tried it, it didn't work. So you can learn, what do I got to do different next time? What is it about this attempt that made it fail? 10,000 failures. That's how someone put it to Thomas Edison. How did you deal with 10,000 failures? He says, I didn't have 10,000 failures. I found 10,000 ways that this light bulb didn't work until I found the right one. He looked at it very differently. Can you imagine he looked at each attempt as a failure? He would have quit a long time ago. We might still be in the dark. I don't know. There is only feedback. Whenever you have something that you deem as a failure, look at it and get the feedback from it. The law of flexibility. I simplified this from its original name, and I simplified the meaning. When we're interacting with others, we don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. We don't know what's going to happen. We have to be flexible. We might go into a conversation, we might go into a meeting, we might go into a relationship with one thing in mind and it not happen the way we thought. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to change when we need to. In business, this is biggie. This is big. Growing up in the computer age, a lot of mainframe computers when I was first into the workspace. You probably never even heard of mainframe computers. There were these computers that would sit, there was a frame with all sorts of big boards in there. Most of them were 12 by 12, some of them were larger. And the boards represented what might be a single processor today and have about 1/100th of the processing power a single processor would today. The reason why you might not have heard of them or you just don't see them around anymore because things change. There are a couple companies out there, big companies, conglomerates, digital equipment company, which we knew as DEC because it was a local company for me, and another local company, Wang. They employed thousands and thousands of people. As computers evolved and became smaller, more compact, and PCs came out, personal computers, and even laptops, they didn't go in that direction. They weren't flexible. They're no longer around. The law of flexibility works in business, and it works for us. Someone who is inflexible doesn't get their way. Someone who is inflexible isn't happy because things don't go their way all the time. When you're flexible, you do get the ability to move with whatever the interaction is. Matter of fact, if you're the most flexible person in a group, in your company, for instance, if you're the most flexible person, you become one of the most valuable people. If you're the most flexible person in a small group of people, you become the leader. So the law of flexibility says that the most flexible component of a machine is the one that controls the machine. And I'm saying the most flexible person in a business, in a community, in a family, becomes one of the most valuable and the person who gets to lead. So remember, to be flexible. The meaning of your communication is the response you get. But when you're communicating with somebody, even if you get no response, that's feedback. If you're communicating with somebody and they're just quiet, they have a problem with what you just said, or they're not listening, or something else. But it's feedback to you to know that your message didn't get across, or may not have gotten across the right. And when you are communicating, the response is going to can be verbal, like the other person or people will say things. What they're saying is the feedback from what you said. If the meaning you intended doesn't work with what you heard, that means they didn't get it. So the meaning of your communication is the response you get. Always look for the response. And by the way, we can go deeper and deeper into this. There's actually looking at the person in their response. Did they twitch? Did they have a sour face? Did they do this or that? That's a response. That's the meaning of your communication. Maybe you didn't mean to do that. Nowadays, you look on your text, you look on your messenger, and you may send out something there, some communication, but words alone are not the full communication. You can word something the same way and have it mean several different things in the way you say it. So when you're actually texting, we have something called emojis. So you look, the meaning of your communication is the response you get. You look at the response you get back. Did they interpret it the way you meant it to be heard? It's very simple, but sometimes we forget these things. And the last thing is a recap. Number one, respect the other's model of the world. Respect the other's model of the world. Talked a lot about it because the first 5 of them had to do with how and why people act differently, say things differently. Everybody's got a different model of the world. Know that. Know that when you're speaking to anyone, even your own family, that everybody's got just this little model of the world, and it shapes the way they see things and they take in things. And it's represented by how they act and how they speak. So next time you go to judge somebody, pause and say, hey, what's going on with them? Well, why are they seeing this way? People are not their behaviors. Yeah, just get away from labels altogether, by the way. People are not their behaviors. All actions have a purpose. All behavior has a positive intention. You can take that personally and look at your behaviors, the behaviors you don't like about yourself, and start to look and say, well, they started at some point with a positive intention to protect me, to keep me safe, and somehow, some way, they've morphed into this. Be grateful for that they were there in the first place, and then work from there. Everyone is doing the best they can with the resources available to them. This is a good way to just drop judgments. If you look at them and say, it's too bad that they're acting this way, they think this way, they just don't have the resources that I've had in my life. I'm not saying pity, but have empathy for them instead of judging. The map is not the territory. Ooh, this can go deep into a philosophical discussion about reality. But the plain and simple truth is, none of us have a really full, true idea of reality because we looking through our filters, we're taking information in through our filters of everything. So we see things different than others do. And when you understand that, when you know that, you understand why in the world somebody has a difference of opinion from you that seems so obvious that they shouldn't. You are in charge of your mind and therefore your results. Yes, empowerment. Think of that. What you think of leads to your actions, and your actions lead to your results. Think of the fact that you're in charge up here. People have all the resources they need to succeed or whatever they want. Okay? All the resources internally. You want to change your job, change your career? Go start investigating about it. You have the resources. Google. Go start investigating. What do I need to do? My son grew up with such a lack of education because of behavioral problems throughout his younger years. And also lack of social interactions. So he didn't understand how to interact correctly socially until well into his 20s. And so he seems like someone that doesn't have a lot of resources. I ask him 4 times 4 and he's going to be counting. However, he wanted to create a business. He wanted to create a business of being able to go out and do those wide load front and back cars. Okay, so actually to be able to do that, he figured out how to work it. He figured out how they get hired. They're not owned by the companies that have the big trucks. No, they're actually hired on by the companies that have the big trucks. I didn't know that. Son found that out. He found out all the laws about it. He found out how it worked. There's a bidding process going on. The companies, he found out which companies it was. He found out the laws, and he went out and did that for a couple of years. Right now, he runs a roadside business. He found out everything about roadside business. I had no idea that there were a lot of independent contractors, and there are, and he's one of them. He found out who he has to go to to bid on these things. When someone calls in and they've got this 24/7 service with a certain car dealer or whatever it is, they call in, and then the company goes out and finds out who's close by, who can do this, and for how much money are they going to do this. I didn't know that. My son, who I didn't think had a whole lot of resources for this, did. Because one of his resources he has the ability to go out and figure it out and learn. He figured out where to go, use the internet very well, has no problem making phone calls, asking questions. It's incredible. We all have the resources within us. All procedures should increase wholeness. I'll just take the backside of this and say we shouldn't have any processes, any interactions, because it really is interactions. We shouldn't have any interactions with anybody that's designed to tear them down, to break them down. All of our interactions with people should be designed to really help them to increase that wholeness. There's only feedback, not failure. I have been there. I have fell on my face so many times. I've learned this whole thing about, hey, only 1 in 5 businesses make it past X number of years. You know, I've learned how that works. um, but I've learned. That's the thing. I've learned. And I don't take failure to heart. I take failure as something that, hey, I know I thought this would work. It didn't work. And now I know why it didn't work. Now I won't make this particular mistake again. So it becomes an actual help. It's not a failure. The law of flexibility. This means that learn to be flexible. Don't go in there with in any interaction with anyone with a narrow mind in a one-way street for any type of resolution or anything that you plan to have happen. First of all, in this day and age, you need to be flexible. Change is happening all the time. Change is happening all the time. So you need to be flexible. Second of all, if you have a plan and it's dependent on others, plan on the plan not going the way you planned. You need to be flexible. You really do. And the last one, the meaning of your communication is the response you get. Simple. Start when you are communicating, start paying a whole lot more attention to your responses. Remember we talked, not we, but when you're in communication, one of the most important things is listening. Now, it's all about listening to what the people have to say. They never really talk about listening and being aware of what happens after you communicate. After you communicate, you have to sit back and listen intently. Did the meaning of your communication get through? Not only listen, watch. Because words aren't as powerful as the physiology. So if you're actually in front of somebody, be it online or not, when you're communicating, watch the expressions, watch the face. Sometimes we have words and we say them in such a way that we don't mean to. And so the meaning of what we have doesn't get across. And the only way we know it is by the response we get. I hope this has been helpful. And you know, when I ran this the very first time, I looked at this and I said, respecting others' model of the world. I'm just really understanding where people are coming from so we don't pass judgment, so we don't, think this of them, and really, really understanding that not everybody sees things the same way we do. Everybody's model is a little different. Everybody thinks a little different. Everybody does things a little different. And we're all in charge of our own minds. What other people do and say doesn't have to affect us or the way we see ourselves. I looked at all of these and I said, if everybody learned these, this world would be in a lot better place. If countries could act that way, respect others' model of the world, and people are not their behaviors. People have all the resources they need to achieve whatever they want. If countries, governments, whatever it is, supported those kind of things, held them up, our world would be much better. I hope this has been something good for you. Take these in. And if you can get just one or two things from this, it will rock your world. This has been Kevin Martin, a mindset coach with Peak Performance Mindset Coaching. Take care.